All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another breakdown, preview, and prediction. We have a mega Mexican matchup this weekend. David Benavidez versus Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez for the unified WBA and WBO cruiserweight titles. We're going to go through it all. We're going to talk about the film study. We're going to talk about who wins this fight and why. But first of all, we've got to talk about the fight because, number one, the cultural significance of the two fights this weekend. Two Japanese megastars and two Mexican megastars fighting this weekend. It's going to be a blockbuster weekend. And if you were to map out all the fights across to 2026, all right, before they all happened, and you were going to talk about fight of the year contenders, just on paper, Zurdo Ramirez versus David Benavidez is 100% in the top five of matchups and potential fight of the years. These two guys, the way in which they approach their fighting, the go forward, the activity, the output, the engines from start to finish, constantly trying to press the other person back, trying to be the bully. This fight's got everything you want in a fight, and we got two elite guys that have been able to do it over the course of not only their careers, David Benavidez' career obviously shorter than Zurdo Ramirez's career, but also over the course of a few divisions. We got guys that started at super middleweight. We're now looking at two guys that are in the cruiserweight division, and they've been able to dominate in each and every fight. Bar one, obviously, Zurdo Ramirez versus Dimitri Bivol, which we will talk about. But first, if you all could, head down the bottom there, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave all your thoughts in the comments below. Let's first talk about how these two guys line up. Obviously, Zurdo Ramirez, the elder fighter, 34 years of age to the 29 years of David Benavidez, 48 professional wins and the one loss for Zurdo Ramirez. That compared to the 31 undefeated of David Benavidez. These two guys have 55 finishes between the two. And they stand approximately the same height, although there is a photo up on your screen right now of their first face-off. David Benavidez is marked down as 6 foot 2 inches, and Zurdo Ramirez is 6 foot 2.5 inches. Now, I'm gathering that Zurdo Ramirez was probably wearing some sort of cowboy boots in that photo, so you got to grant that sort of extra little bit of height. But Zurdo Ramirez does look markedly taller than, half an inch of David Benavidez. We're going to have to wait and see until they're in the ring how they actually size up against each other. Obviously, Zurdo Ramirez also the more natural at the cruiserweight division. They've both got similar reach, 75 inches to 74.5 inches of David Benavidez. And of course, a big talking point, an orthodox fighter versus a southpaw fighter. Zurdo Ramirez, obviously, he's got his nickname from that left hand of being a southpaw. Now, I want to talk about Zurdo Ramirez first, because coming into this fight, no doubt David Benavidez is going to be the favorite. I think he deserves to be the favorite. Saying all that, Zurdo Ramirez, if you were to compare the resumes, you'd probably say Zurdo Ramirez has the better resume, and he's actually had fights at cruiserweight, whereas David Benavidez is going to be his first fight at cruiserweight, and he's even limited in the light heavyweight division. Zurdo Ramirez had plenty of fights at super middleweight, had plenty of fights at light heavy, and has now had quite a few fights at the cruiserweight division. So, all that points in the favor of Zurdo Ramirez. But I think it's fair when you compare where these two guys are in their career. David Benavidez just keeps getting better and better every time we see him fight. Every time he steps up in weight, he seems to improve as well. Whereas Zurdo Ramirez, he's reached his peak in his career. He's definitely plateaued, and we're probably looking at the back end of Zurdo Ramirez's career. If this fight doesn't go well, this very well could be Zurdo Ramirez's last fight. You know what? If he wins, he could call it a day as well. So I think it's fair to say Benavidez goes into this fight the favorite, but I think a lot of people have written Zurdo Ramirez off completely. Which you can never do in these fights. Zurdo Ramirez has got so much experience and is so crafty in these fights. And the way in which this fight I see playing out, Zurdo Ramirez has a very, very good chance of beating David Benavidez. And we're going to talk about why. If we talk about David Benavidez, well, if we talk about them both, because if you're ever going to pick a fight where two guys stylistically match up so perfectly and almost identical, it's these two guys. Obviously, there's slight differences. Zurdo Ramirez is the bigger, bulkier fighter. David Benavidez is the quicker fighter, but in terms of the way in which they want to fight, in terms of what their weaknesses are, they are almost mirror images of each other. Obviously, the slight changes, orthodox southpaw, Zurdo Ramirez, probably the better guy ripping to the body. David Benavidez, the better guy ripping to the head. Look, there's slight differences, but in terms of stylistically, these two guys are going to approach this fight the exact same way, and that is, I want to be on the front foot. I want to push you back. I want to continuously be throwing punches at you. And they're both going to do that, which makes this a very interesting fencing match because I feel like whoever spends the most time on the back foot in this fight will lose this fight because neither of them, I would say, are great back foot fighters. If I was to pick one that's better on the back foot, I'd probably say Zurdo Ramirez. I think he's shown that over the course of his career that he's a little bit better. David Benavidez has been caught out a few times on the back foot and can get stuck a little bit. But they both have the same weaknesses. Neither one of them like an opponent that runs. Neither one likes a mover. Neither one likes a clincher either. If you watch that fight between Caleb Plant and David Benavidez, although Caleb Plant loses quite comfortably, the opening dribble, the in and out of the pocket, the moving it around the ring, you just couldn't hunt him down. So realistically, those weaknesses aren't going to be present in this fight because these two guys, neither one is going to run away. Neither one has good enough footwork or movement to run away. But you'd say Zurdo Ramirez on the inside probably has the better footwork to pivot around David Benavidez. David Benavidez can sometimes fall over himself. Saying that, Zurdo Ramirez on the front foot can sometimes get a little bit too excited and fall over the front foot. So there'll be chances for both of these fighters. Why I think Zurdo Ramirez has a good chance in this fight against David Benavidez is when David Benavidez is fighting well and he's on the front foot, he looks unstoppable. But I will look at his last two fights, the one against David Morrell and the one against Anthony Yarde, although he beats Yarde quite convincingly, and I actually thought the commentators were a little bit too complimentary to Anthony Yarde's performance. One thing Anthony Yarde did consistently in that fight, and whenever he did have those slight moments of success, it was inviting the pressure of David Benavidez and punching through the combinations. He'd wait until David Benavidez, unleashed one or two punches, and then he would try and fire in between punches. And that's something that Gilberto Ramirez can do. He can send that straight right hand through the guard of David Benavidez when he's throwing, when he's on the back foot. I've seen David Morrell do that as well against David Benavidez. So there's going to be opportunities on the back foot for Zurdo Ramirez, and I've seen him in his fight footage be able to do that on the back foot. Zurdo Ramirez, though, he's not going to be able to win this fight off the back of walking back and landing a straight right every now and then. Zurdo Ramirez will have to use that straight right, will have to use that counter punch to not only hit David Benavidez in these gaps, but also push him back. That's something David Morrell was able to do. He'd wait for David Benavidez to apply the pressure. He'd catch him off guard, and then it's push him against the ropes. It's now, all right, let's see how you like to be fought on the back foot. And that's what David Benavidez really struggles with. And I've seen in his few fights that every time he does get pushed back, every time he's on that back foot, he does look a little bit lost out of ideas, and he'll try anything to push you back and switch the momentum because David Benavidez, a bit like Zurdo Ramirez, neither one will be able to fight this fight off the back foot well enough to get a result. But if I was going to pick one to fight off the back foot, it would be Zurdo Ramirez to invite the pressure, catch him, and then move forward and apply your pressure. And another thing David Benavidez does with such a high guard, I think Zurdo Ramirez can have luck rip into the body. Zurdo Ramirez is a prolific body puncher. I'm hearing he's about 35% of his punches in total go to the body. We know he's a body snatcher. And with David Benavidez, he doesn't have much of a guard over the body. And a lot of fighters just sort of neglect that to David Benavidez. And I know Zurdo Ramirez won't. It'll be whether David Benavidez can take those punches from Zurdo Ramirez. Because Zurdo Ramirez, we're talking high amounts of punches every single fight. 35% of those go into the body. It's going to be hard work for David Benavidez to keep that high guard up the whole entire fight. Now, in terms of what David Benavidez can do well in this fight, there is a big flaw in Zurdo Ramirez. Now, both of these guys like to let their hands fly continuously. Now, when you're letting your hands fly, obviously your guard's not there, your defense isn't there. And Zurdo Ramirez will continuously get caught with a left hook. All right. It helps because he's a southpaw. That left hook from an orthodox fighter is always there. And I've seen David Benavidez land that left hook. He even likes that leaping left hook to go over the guard. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities in this fight. I think for me, when you narrow it down and you look at what both of these fighters can do well and what they struggle at, Zurdo Ramirez, the closer he can get this fight, the dirtier he can get this fight, the more clinch active he can get this fight, it'll benefit Zurdo Ramirez because of his footwork. He's able to pivot right and left, go around his opponent, and then rip to his body, rip to his head. And David Benavidez, I don't think, can match that footwork of Zurdo Ramirez. The problem I have with Zurdo Ramirez is I don't believe he has the pace or the output to sustain the pressure of David Benavidez. If you look at the way that he fought Chris Smith is a very stationary fighter. He's very slow. He's very languished. His punches, they take a while to get there, and he's not sending them as quickly as David Benavidez. You've seen some of David Benavidez's work, all right, when he knocked out Medina with those 19-odd punches in a complete flurry. You saw what he did to Anthony Yarde against the ropes, holding his head 10, 11, 12 uppercuts and hooks in a row. That sort of pace, that sort of flurry that David Benavidez is able to do, he's able to consistently do it over the course of 12 rounds. I'm not sure Zurdo Ramirez can keep up with that pace. And although Zurdo Ramirez has an engine, his engine is a slow build. It's slow for the first few rounds, and every single round we're going to add more and more punches and we're going to work the opponent. But his opponents haven't been the output monsters that David Benavidez has had. They're more technical boxers. And when you had a high worker like Dimitri Bivol, he was lost. Dimitri Bivol was able to go in and out of the pocket consistently, keep working him, and dance around the ring. Obviously, David Benavidez is not going to approach the fight like that. But in terms of the amount of output that Dimitri Bivol was able to land in that fight, David Benavidez is also going to be able to land that amount of output in this fight. So it really hinges on Zurdo Ramirez's ability to punch between punches, because Zurdo Ramirez, when he's fighting, he'll rip to the body, he'll rip to the head, but he isn't a quick fighter. David Benavidez is going to want to be in that pocket as well, and I feel like David Benavidez will be able to land those punches quicker than what Zurdo Ramirez will, and I think that's what this fight really hinges on. And if we're going to talk about predictions, for me, it is clear that David Benavidez will win this fight. I think David Benavidez just has more to offer. I think where he is in his career, as long as he can adjust to cruiserweight, which is a question, can he adjust to this weight? Zurdo Ramirez isn't that big a puncher. I don't feel that Zurdo Ramirez is going to be able to land a big enough shot unless David Benavidez can wildly not take punches at cruiserweight, which, he has been caught a few times off guard. He's been dropped a few times. He's been hurt and wobbled a few times. So those were at super middleweight and light heavyweight. At cruiserweight, if Zurdo Ramirez can land that big punch, if Benavidez, like Zurdo Ramirez reckons, has a weak body, then he's going to be able to exploit that. I just don't think David Benavidez is going to be hurt by the punches that Zurdo Ramirez dishes out. And unfortunately, the only way to stop David Benavidez is to hurt the guy. And I don't see Zurdo Ramirez, unless the body is that weak, unless the chin is that weak at cruiserweight from David Benavidez, I don't see a clear way that Zurdo Ramirez either outboxes or outworks David Benavidez. And for that reason, David Benavidez, for me, wins this fight. I think David Benavidez, I've gone back and forth whether he gets a decision or a stoppage. And although I think he outworks Zurdo Ramirez has shown over the course of his career that he can take a heavy, heavy punch and just keep walking through it. I mean, Chris Smith, who's a massive cruiserweight, hit him with everything he's got. And Zurdo Ramirez barely flinched. So unless the referee steps in because David Benavidez is just dishing out too many punches, I do see this fight going the distance. David Benavidez will win it. I think David Benavidez will win it well. When you look at their fights, they both sort of fight the same way. They both want to go the 12 rounds. The longer the fight goes, the better each fighter gets. The problem for me is David Benavidez starts a whole lot quicker than Zurdo Ramirez. And Zurdo Ramirez, he always banks on someone to slow down at the end of the fight. David Benavidez isn't going to slow down at the back end of the fight. So even if they split the late rounds, the early rounds will go to David Benavidez, and I see David Benavidez then getting the decision. For me, David Benavidez has got all the markings of one of the great fighters in terms of what he's done so far in his career, what I think he's going to do, and this is going to be possibly the biggest name on Benavidez's resume. It is a massive, massive fight. It's a massive win for David Benavidez, and I think, like I said, he's going to be the bully in this fight. I think he's going to spend more time on the front foot. He's going to land the quicker punches. I don't think Zurdo Ramirez can match. He can maybe match the output of the amount of punches thrown, but in terms of the speed, in terms of getting there first, in terms of landing that punch first, David Benavidez is going to do that. David Benavidez has also spoken about the fact that, we sparred before. Zurdo Ramirez is weak to the body. He is weak to the chin. I'm going to be able to beat him down and finish him. Like I said, I'm not sure whether he'll get the finish. I think it will go to a decision. But I think David Benavidez, if he can carry that speed that he had at super middleweight, now at cruiserweight, and you add that weight and you add that power, the finish could very well come. But either way, I expect a beatdown from David Benavidez to beat Zurdo Ramirez. David Benavidez, I mean, you look at some of the stats that he leads in his career, and I'm going to run through them. Zurdo Ramirez ranks number 2 overall amongst top fighters, second to Shakur Stevenson in total connect percentage with 38.5%. He ranks 8th overall in average total punches per round, which is 22.5. For reference, William Zepeda throws 30. He's number 3 overall in jab connect percentage at 26.7%. Ranked 7 in average power punches landed per round at 16.9. Ranked 6 in power punch connection, landing 45% of his power punches, and ranks the 5th in the lowest amount of punches conceded. Those are power punches from opposition. He only concedes 26.2% of opponents' power punches. Those stats there show you just how elite David Benavidez is. And although Zurdo Ramirez is able to outwork a lot of fighters, and he's a very crafty fighter, he'll be able to fight on the inside and make this a very competitive match. One that I think will be a fencing match back and forth. I don't see Zurdo Ramirez being able to match what David Benavidez is. So for that reason, guys, I've got David Benavidez to beat Zurdo Ramirez via unanimous decision. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya!